Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis speaking out over the weekend, this time quoting scripture about weapons being formed against her. She's talking about how hard her job is. We know, we're aware. Pretty much everyone knows that. That's why most people don't run to be DA. This, as the judge overseeing her potential disqualification, will make several key decisions in the coming days. Do you know this thing is not over? It's still under review. The judge is figuring out whether some of these claims of attorney-client privilege are going to stand. And we have yet to hear closing arguments on the hearing, at least, from the defense and the prosecution. So all that's about to happen in the coming days. Meantime, we're getting a great response to the deep dive we took on this case on Friday. You can go take a look at it on YouTube. It's setting the internet on fire. So go check it out at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, if you missed that deep dive. Everything you thought you wanted to know about the Fani Willis case and more. As we signed off for the long weekend, something important happened. As far as we can tell, virtually everybody's missed it. A key witness was on the stand. His name is Terrence Bradley. He's Nathan Wade's former law partner and friend. Now, he was suggested to be the defense's so-called star witness, meaning the defense in this case, kind of confusing given the way this case is unfolding, but the defense is Trump. The defense is this guy, Michael Roman, whose lawyer, Ashley Merchant, brought this whole affair thing to light. And the state is Fani Willis. And in this case, the lawyers, like Ms. Cross, defending Fani Willis and Nathan Wade and their behavior. So it's kind of weird because we say defense, but in this hearing, it's more like Fani Willis is the defense. Anywho, what I'm saying when I say that Terrence Bradley is the so-called star witness, I mean of the defendants, Michael Roman and Trump. That's what was allegedly posited by their lawyers. But here's what happened. Last week, he took the stand for about 2 minutes and then said, attorney-client, privilege, no. And he stepped down, and Ashley Merchant called a different witness. She called Robin Yardley, and that woman took the stand and said, this affair began long before 2022, as Fani and Nathan testified. I was there. I was Fani's longtime good friend. And let me tell you, they had an affair as far back as 19. So that was big. And Ashley Merchant, the lawyer for defendant Roman, was saying, I got another guy in the wings who's going to say this. His name is Terrence Bradley. I'll give you Robin Yardley because she's easy. She's nobody's lawyer. We don't have any of these attorney-client privilege objections. So let me put her on the stand, which we did. They tried to say she was disgruntled because she had been let go from Fani Willis's office, but they proved she had been let go. They didn't prove she's a liar. She's somebody who would perjure herself with an axe to grind. They didn't even prove that she was bitter. They just proved that she was let go under circumstances that she seemed to object to. Anyway, up pops Terrence Bradley on day 2. Again, Nathan Wade's divorce lawyer for a time and friend and former law partner. And something extraordinary happened on the stand. And we're going to walk you through the key moments in his testimony and why the day ended with a potential bombshell. Joining me now for the first time on this show is Philip Holloway. He's the founder of the Holloway Law Group based in Cobb County, Georgia. He appears regularly on national and international media covering legal news, and he happens to know a lot of the key players involved in this developing story. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. With cyber attacks on the rise, protecting your data security is more important than ever. So why is Congress considering a bill that could put your credit card data at greater risk of being hacked or exposed to foreign networks? Our advertiser, the Electronics Payments Coalition, says the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill shifts billions in consumer spending to less secure payment networks, also that corporate megastores can make bigger profits. Find out more about the issue at electronicpaymentscoalition.org and decide for yourself if you would like to tell your senators to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.
The first time you made a sale online with GoDaddy was also the first time you heard of a town named Dinosaur, Colorado.
We just got an order from Dinosaur, Colorado.
Start an easy-to-build, powerful website for free with a partner that always puts you first. GoDaddy, tools and support for every small business first.
Yeah. Sounds. you not entertained?
5, 4, 3, 2, I let one go.
Phil, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Megyn. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, the pleasure's all ours. So Terrence Bradley wound up being quite important on Friday. The day kind of started in a sleepy way. They had the former governor of Georgia take the stand to say, Fani tried to hire me before she hired Nathan Wade. And on cross-examination, he admitted that when Fani was talking to him about being special prosecutor, Nathan Wade was already in the room. So the defendants are basically suggesting Nathan Wade was already on board. You know, you might have been potentially added as another, but you were not going to replace Wade. Anyway, that's where that went. Fani Willis's dad took the stand, the former Black Panther. Yeah, it's important to carry cash. No, we didn't live in this house. I never saw Nathan in the house in this, whatever. It was all minutia. Then comes Terrence Bradley, back to the stand, Nathan Wade's former lawyer. And Ashley Merchant got up there, Phil, and seemed to be, number one, trying to redeem herself because all of Fani Willis's team, including Fani herself, the day before had said, Ashley Merchant's a liar. She lied. The only reason she got this hearing was she claimed she had Terrence Bradley, who was going to confirm an affair began prior to 2022. That didn't happen yesterday. Terrence Bradley, in his 2 minutes on the stand, suggested he had never texted with Ashley Merchant. She's a liar. We shouldn't even be here. And Ashley Merchant started introducing texts between herself and Terrence Bradley into the record that completely rehabilitated Ashley Merchant, made Fani Willis and her team look hysterical and dishonest, and showed, I believe, that Terrence Bradley, whether he asserted privilege on Friday or not, 100% behind the scenes was confirming this affair to Ashley Merchant prior to having a case of fright when he took the stand. Tell me where I'm going wrong.
Well, no, I think you're pretty much square on with all of this, Megyn. Listen, it's obvious that if you read between the lines, there's something in those text messages that Fani Willis really, really, really doesn't want to get out. They literally, Megyn, they threw Terrence Bradley under the proverbial bus. They accused him with unsubstantiated, uncharged claims of having engaged in a sexual assault in order to discredit the man.
Stand by. Hold that thought, because we're not there yet.
Oh.
Because what happened was Ashley gets him on the stand. She starts asking him about the text messages she and he have exchanged. This guy, though he represented Nathan Wade and on the stand was like, everything's privileged, I can't say anything. Oh, he was saying things to Ashley Merchant. He was saying a lot of things prior to actually getting dragged into court. He didn't have any qualms about attorney-client privilege whatsoever. So let's just start there.
Yeah, well, we can infer that those text messages, I think, will confirm what the former employee of the DA's office said, which was that the affair started much earlier than they had claimed that it did. In fact, as you said, that, she said that it started in as early as 2019. I can infer from what I saw that those text messages probably confirm something along those lines. I hope that when the judge reviews those text messages, and he did that or is doing that, in an in-camera review, I hope that he rules that those things are admissible, because it's obvious that there was a very, I think, broad claim of attorney-client privilege that may or may not necessarily be entirely accurate. The lines, Megyn, get blurred when lawyers who are her friends, they are business partners, when they undertake to represent each other in something like a divorce, for example, the lines are very blurred, because what the attorney might know about his client might be from an attorney-client type of conversation. It might be from personal observation. It might be from water cooler talk around the office or just hanging out at lunch. So we just don't know exactly what the basis of Terrence Bradley's knowledge is. And that's what the judge has to figure out when he looks at all this stuff back, behind the scenes in his office. So I think that there's something there. We would not have seen her, and by her, I mean Fani Willis, we would not have seen her team as aggressively trying to keep this out as we did see, unless they thought that those text messages could absolutely bury Fani Willis. Listen, if she can be shown to have perpetrated a fraud on this court, she could be disbarred and she could potentially be jailed. She's essentially accusing all of these defendants of making false statements. But if it can come to light and if it is shown that she is doing that with this court, she's just as guilty as anybody she might be accusing of doing the same thing. And the consequences for her are very dire. She could lose her law license. She could wind up in jail, certainly out of office. And look, the state is looking at this, the state Senate. You've now got Congress looking at it. Fani Willis is under the microscope, and she does not want to be there. She doesn't like playing defense. Prosecutors are accustomed to being on the offense, but she is squarely on her heels. And what the judge rules about these text messages, probably, that is the key to her fate. The judge's ruling literally, I think, controls her professional fate in this case.
I mean, I think we're already there with the testimony of Robin Yurty, who was Fani's longtime friend and for at least some time employee at the DA's office, who said, they lied. The affair began back in 2019. I know that because I witnessed it with my own eyes and because my good friend at the time, Fani Willis, told me all about it. She was having an affair with Nathan Wade. Now, Nathan and Fani disagreed. They said it didn't start till 2022. But when we closed the day out on Thursday, we had counsel for Fani, the state attorney, Cross, say, when we come back tomorrow, we're going to put a bunch of witnesses up there to show you Robin Yurty's a liar. That's what she promised. Didn't happen, Phil. I watched all day. I waited. Not a one.
Yeah, all we got was Fani Willis's Black Panther father, who came to court and talked all about how he loves cash. He tells his daughter to use cash. Cash is king. It's a black thing. Everything needs to be paid in cash. And he was trying to talk about selling a script. And he talked about everything except what we needed to hear was, when did this whole thing start? He claimed to never really see or talk to his daughter for various reasons. But surprisingly, he did know enough to know that at some point in 2019, she had some other boyfriend, but it wasn't Nathan Wade. That testimony seemed to be, not all that probative. It didn't really move the needle very much, other than to maybe explain why Fani Willis can't answer a straight question. She seems to get that naturally, from her father. But we did not see
by it honestly.
We didn't see any other witnesses that would contradict the claim that this affair started in 2019.
No,
listen,
that's the thing. So Phil, I want to go through it. Hold on, because I want to play some of the sound. But this is important because when we closed the day on Thursday, Robin Yurty did some damage. Fani and Nathan later took the stand and said Robin is wrong. It didn't begin until 2022. But when the day closed, Fani's lawyer said the next day they were going to demolish Robin Yurty with witnesses showing us how dishonest she was. Not one. They didn't call one witness to even try to do that. It was either a bluff or it fell through, but she didn't have it. And trust me, if she had it, she would have put the witness on the stand because Robin Yurty hurt them badly. To the contrary, what we saw was Terrence Bradley, the lawyer, take the stand, try his level best to wiggle. I mean, he was wiggling like an Elvis Presley concert, trying to get out of offering any conversations he's ever had with Nathan Wade. And of course, the defense was trying to say, he's casting too wide a net, Judge. He can talk about what he knew from Nathan Wade, his friend, his law partner. Yeah. He just can't talk about attorney-client communications, facts he learned from Nathan only in the context of the AC relationship that were offered to him for purposes of seeking legal advice. And Ashley Merchant was trying to show, you worked together, you knew each other for years. Come on, there's office talk. Sadow, Trump's lawyer, was trying to say, there's office talk. You guys talked about stuff. No, only about sports. That's the only thing we ever discussed outside of the attorney-client. It was obviously untrue. This guy, to me, was like the biggest liar of anybody I've seen. I don't know any of these players. I know you're down there, but to me, he came across as the biggest liar because he lied to try to protect Nathan Wade at every turn. No, nothing other than attorney-client privilege discussions, only discussed sports bull. However, Ashley Merchant had him because prior to getting to court, he did text with her. He admitted it. And when she showed him her phone with the text messages, he didn't deny it. And we got to hear about at least two of the texts he's trying to get out of now. One was, in one text message, introduced, hold on, we actually may just have it here. Yeah, let's just play it, where he was asked about one of the text messages and the content was revealed in SOT 3.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, did I text you asking you if you knew who I could get an affidavit from about the affair? And you responded, no, no one would freely burn that bridge.
Yes, I do see that.
All right, Phil, so let's start with that. His response, as Nathan Wade's lawyer, friend, whatever, was not, what affair? There's no affair.
Yeah.
Or I can't talk to you about this because it's attorney-client privileged.
Yeah, what he said was who would want to burn that bridge. And that underscores, he was obviously uncomfortable being there, but that alone proves that when Ashley Merchant claimed in her written legal pleading, she said, look, I'm going to bring Terrence Bradley to court. He's going to back up the other witness, and he's going to back up and confirm that this affair started before they claimed it did in 2022. Ashley Merchant is a lawyer who would not have put that in writing in a legal pleading filed in a court if she did not have a good faith basis for putting it in there. That's how it works. I know Ashley Merchant. She's very reputable. She's not going to do something that is that dishonest. If she was basically referring to her conversations with this witness through text messaging, that was her good faith basis for making the claim. And she would not have put it in there if it weren't true. And I think we can all read between the lines, even though we haven't seen or heard all of the text messages. When the judge goes back and reads those and goes over that with Mr. Bradley, the judge is going to see it. Now, the judge is going to have to decide, okay, let's say if I decide this is not admissible, I've got to put it out of my brain and not use it for any basis for determining this case. But I don't know how the judge really can do that, because if he sees these text messages and he knows that Fani Willis and Nathan Wade have not been honest and truthful to him, that's got to make a big impact. And I think that the judge is going to reconsider some of his rulings. And I think that a lot of these claims of attorney-client privilege will in fact be ruled as not privileged. So we may see Terrence Bradley back on the stand again whenever this hearing reconvenes. And I think that's a very likely thing to happen.
Yes, okay.
Maybe not all of the stuff's going to come in, but I think a lot of these text messages might.
Here's a second one that we got, the dress was lifted up a little on a couple of these. So we got to hear in the couple of the questions what Ashley Merchant has. And keep in mind, this is not her whole case. It doesn't boil down to these text messages, but she was called a liar. First thing Fani Willis did when she took the stand on Thursday. You lied. Your whole basis for getting this hearing was a lie. No, it wasn't. Nathan Wade's lawyer gave it up to Ashley Merchant in texts. And by the way, that wasn't her only evidence. Then she kept digging. Then she found Robin Yurti. And all of this was the basis for calling Nathan Wade and Fani Willis and asking them the tough questions, which was a totally fair thing to do. And they took umbrage with it. They tried to get out of the hearing altogether, saying you have no good faith basis to call us. Well, Ashley Merchant did have a good faith basis. These texts prove it. Robin Yurti proves it and advances the case against these two even more, that they did have an affair, that it appears to have begun long before they've admitted, and that they were in an inappropriate relationship that they appear to have lied to the court about. Here's the second exchange that reveals some of the content, SOT 5.
I made reference to an email that Ms. Merchant would have sent you about the motion she was going to file. If you look at this, does this appear to be the email that you received? It's dated January the 6th, 2024 at 10:25 a.m.
Yeah, I see it, the email, yes.
So that's the email that you received, correct? Along with, obviously, the attachment, which is referenced.
Yes.
Okay. And then, did you respond to that email within the text message that I've just placed before you?
Yes, I said it looks good.
So the answer is yes.
Oh, yes, I did. Okay.
So there you have it, Phil. You've got Ashley Merchant sent him the January 8th motion she filed, which detailed the affair allegations, which included that it began long before she hired Nathan Wade as special prosecutor. And Nathan Wade's former lawyer / friend looked it over and responded to Ashley Merchant again, not what affair? No, it didn't. this is all wrong, or I can't comment on this as an attorney who represented him. He responded, looks good. So that tells us what?
Yeah, that tells us that Ashley is barking up the right tree. Listen, I watched these people call, Ashley, an outright liar, and I'm wondering if Ashley doesn't have some basis to sue them for defamation, because the civil discovery on that would, I think, be very, very revealing. But when a lawyer like Ashley, takes the time to send this over to, a witness who knows all of the details and says, is this accurate? And the witness says, looks good to me. That looks like that witness has made an admission, has basically let the cat out of the bag, has opened the door, if you will, to all other conversations he's had about this case. And it opens the door, I think, to all other information he may have, because he may have actually, waived and already given away anything that was covered by attorney-client privilege. The judge, I hope, was watching, and I think he was. He was taking very good notes. But that particular exchange with attorney Steve Sadow, who represents former President Trump, was one of the key moments that I think sets the stage for the admissibility, in my view, of all of the later communications that Terrence Bradley had with Ashley Merchant. So I think it's going to come in. I think this is all going to corroborate Ms. Yurdy, and I think that the judge is probably going to have no choice but to find that these lawyers have perpetrated a fraud on the court. They have an obligation as officers of the court to be truthful, to be honest, to be candid with the court. And it also raises the question, Megyn, and I don't think many people have talked about this, if any of the other prosecutors on this prosecution team know that there was a fraud, and they're taking actions by course of continuing to represent the state in this case that further and perpetrate that fraud, does that bring them into this? Does that mean that they have some obligation to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to participate in this if I know that my boss is not being truthful with the court? This is going to be very interesting to see what the judge rules. Yeah. Okay,
I do want to dig into that. Let's table it for 1 second, because I want to get to the point you raised earlier, which is then there was a massive pileup because there are real questions about whether the rules here are very complicated, because all these people, not Robin Yurty, but Nathan Wade, Fani Willis, Terrence Bradley, not to mention Ms. Cross, Ms. Merchant, Mr. Sadow, they're all officers of the court. So Terrence Bradley, for example, and Ms. Cross, representing Fani Willis now, they have multiple obligations. You have an obligation as a lawyer to maintain the attorney-client privilege and protect your client's privileges and confidentialities. However, you also have a simultaneous strong duty as an officer of the court to protect the integrity of the court. You're there as an officer of that judge. When you're in that courtroom, you work for him too, and for the justice system. And there is a requirement, it's basically to maintain the integrity of the court. And what the ethical obligations say is that the disclosure of a client's false testimony, right? So if you're a lawyer and you know your client is testifying to something that's false, and you know that because he told you in confidence as his lawyer, the disclosure of a client's false testimony can result in grave consequences to the client, including not only a sense of betrayal, but also loss of the case and perhaps a prosecution for perjury. But the alternative is that a lawyer cooperate in deceiving the court, thereby subverting the truth-finding process, which the adversary system is designed to implement. And it goes on to talk about that balancing test between a lawyer's obligation to the client and to the court, and what the obligation of a lawyer is when they conflict. And Terrence Bradley was squarely in the middle of that on Friday, because he was claiming he knew stuff via the attorney-client privilege. I think we both have questions about whether that's really how he learned it. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. If he learned about an affair from the attorney-client privilege, and then he saw Nathan Wade lie about the affair on the stand, I think the defense is right. He would have an obligation to testify truthfully to the court. The obligation to the court as an officer of the court would trump the attorney-client privilege obligation. That's what Sadow and others were arguing. And it's one of the things the judge is going to have to decide. So I'll just get your take on that now instead of tabling it because I just teed it up. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, it's the ethical duty of candor to the court, and we see this sometimes, like in a criminal case, when the defendant has, say, confessed to his attorney, right, and the attorney says, okay, well, you don't need to testify, but then the person says, look, I'm going to testify, it's my right, and the attorney has to let him, but the attorney can't ask questions because to do so would be perpetrating a fraud on the court. So the attorney just has to put the witness up and say, all right, tell the judge whatever it is you got to say. And that way the attorney's not participating in it. So it's definitely a gray area. It's a very uncomfortable area. I don't know that I would agree that Terrence Bradley had the obligation to take the stand and to correct something that Nathan Wade had said, but certainly he cannot do anything to assist Nathan Wade if he's saying something that's not true.
Well, I'll give you something. I'll give you something there, Phil. I'll give you something there. The defense elicited testimony from him that the divorce proceeding is not yet closed, and they're correct. The divorce apparently is not final. And in any event,
right,
the time for any after settlement appeals and so on and challenges has not expired. And according to the ethical rules, an attorney in a case who knows that there's been perjury in a case has an obligation all the way through that proceeding until it's totally closed and the time for appeals or filings post resolution have been exhausted to raise with the court if he knows there's been perjury. So while it came out that Terrence Bradley was not the lawyer for Nathan Wade by the time Nathan Wade submitted those interrogatory answers saying, I never had an affair. I never took a trip with anybody. I don't have any receipts showing any travel with another woman in his divorce proceeding. Terrence Bradley represented him for a time in that case, and I believe he would have an ongoing obligation in that proceeding to go back and correct the record. Forget this proceeding. I think Terrence Bradley could be in trouble in the divorce proceeding if he knows that Nathan Wade perjured himself.
Well, you may very well be right. This whole thing is very complicated. The rules are not always crystal clear, and oftentimes there's a lot of gray areas. Terrence Bradley clearly believes he's living in one of those gray areas. He went so far as to contact the bar and say, what am I supposed to do here? And the state bar gave him some kind of, advice. Maybe it's binding, maybe it's not. But at the end of the day, he's going to have to disclose this if this judge says that he's going to have to disclose it. And here's the thing, Megyn, if I'm the judge, and I think that there's a hint of any evidence that somebody has perpetrated a fraud on my court and on me, I am going to move mountains to get to the truth. And if that means ordering lawyers to testify, so be it. If it means referring it to the state bar for a more aggressive, thorough investigation, so be it. But I'm going to get to the bottom of this because perpetrating a fraud on the court is one of the worst things that can happen in our justice system. And this is the place where Fani Willis and anybody else who may have engaged in a fraud on the court has to be very, very, very careful. She did herself no favors by testifying. She did herself no favors by having her team work so hard to shut Terrence Bradley up, because what it did, it gives the appearance that she's got something to hide, and that is a terrible look for a prosecutor.
That's our last point. So Terrence Bradley said very little. The most damaging part of his testimony for Fani Willis was the part Ashley Merchant read out loud and Sadow read out loud, which was a reference back to his text with Merchant prior to the proceeding. But on the stand, Terrence Bradley did no harm to Nathan Wade. He was bending over backwards to not do any harm to Nathan Wade. He just kept saying attorney-client privilege. You would never have known that based on the cross-examination that the state, Ms. Cross, unleashed on this guy.
Oh, yeah.
They went after him, both guns blazing. I'm like, did they watch the same testimony I did? Because he's on their side. Maybe he wasn't before the proceeding, but once he's taken the stand, he's totally Team Wade, and they tried to eviscerate this guy. Sexual assault is why you left, allegedly, the law partnership with Nathan Wade. Not one, but two instances of it. Tried to completely assassinate the guy's character, and it was a mistake. It was a strategic mistake by the prosecution because A, it telegraphed to all of us that Terrence Bradley has something very, very bad to say, and we all want to hear it even more. And never mind us, telegraphed to the judge. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's right. They literally threw him under the bus. I was surprised by that. I've known Terrence Bradley for over 25 years. There's not a fiber of my being that will believe he sexually assaulted a client or anyone else. But what is clear is that some allegation was made, and that was perhaps the basis for his leaving the Nathan Wade law firm, which the judge correctly pointed out was a little bit contrary to what he may have said. And if he claimed that he left because of some dispute that was covered by attorney-client privilege, the judge said, wait a minute, no, this doesn't sound like attorney-client privilege.
Which is what he said. That was his claim, that he left, at least in part, he said, because they had a dispute over the divorce proceeding and attorney-client privileged information. And it turns out that, okay, maybe it was having to do with a sexual assault allegation against Terrence.
Yeah, and then the judge said, now I'm going to have to go back and reconsider if this witness is not misinterpreting
Phil.
or misconstruing.
We have that. Let me play that soundbite, because we've got the defense attorneys who jumped all over this, and then you'll hear the judge at the end saying, I'm going to have to reconsider all these claims of attorney-client privilege since you, Mr. Bradley, have a different definition of it than I do. Watch here, SOT 7.
Judge, if this is allowed to continue in this way, and it does appear a little bit harassing, then is Mr. Bradley going to be excused from his privilege because this is not...
That's what I was going to do. Don't do that.
Mr. Chilver.
Sit on it. I think she's already done that.
Your Honor, I'm asking in all seriousness, that privilege, although...
Based on the answer right now, I think now we've opened up a whole area. What he has just responded to, he previously said was privilege. That doesn't sound like privilege to me. We'll have to address that when we go back through the rundown. Mr. Bradley previously testified that the reason he left the firm was totally and completely covered by privilege. When asked by the state, he went into a factual scenario that, to my mind, I don't see how it relates to privilege at all. And so now I'm left wondering if Mr. Bradley has been properly interpreting privilege this entire time.
That last line, that's it, Phil. I mean, whatever. I don't think a lot of people care about the sexual assault allegation. Clearly nothing came of it. You tell me the guy's got a good reputation down there, you know him. But the fact that it was wrongly asserted, in the judge's view there, to cover the circumstances of his departure from the firm caused the judge to doubt Mr. Bradley's interpretation of it in the context of his relationship with Wade and the discussions about Fani. And therefore, this was a big mistake by the state to bring this up, to try to impeach him when he hadn't done them any harm. Now they uncorked a whole other problem for themselves.
I think they just couldn't help themselves. They had this witness that was going to come in and talk all about sexual assault, and they were gnashing at the bit to get that testimony out there, to try to embarrass somebody that they believe was talking to Michael Roman's attorney about Nathan Wade and maybe saying some bad things. And so they really, really wanted to attack him. They should have just stopped. They should have said, no more questions, Judge, not gone there. And we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now, you and I. This was a strategic error, but it opened the door. It kicked it wide open for the judge to go back and say, wait a minute. I think now we might be able to have him testify about a lot of these things that the prosecution team, the state, did not want him to say. And so I don't know what the judge is going to rule, but if I were the judge, I think that a lot of that I would rule is now fair game for the defense to bring him back and to continue to explore with him under oath to see exactly when this affair between Nathan Wade and Fani Willis began. This is all about now proving, if they can, the fraud that the merchant team and everybody else on the defense says was perpetrated on this court. That's going to be huge, and that's going to be the next big area that we're going to see this case, I think, venture into.
So, Phil, what do we expect this week? The judge is he said maybe as soon as Friday, he'll have another hearing. What's happening this week?
Yeah, he's been having hearings basically every Friday that are, status or other things. Because of the number of defendants, he's allocating some weekly court time to this. He's not going to rule until several things happen. He's got to conclude the hearing that we've been talking about. As you mentioned, there's still summations. That could be done in person, or it might be done by briefs. He may even have more testimony before it's over. And then he's got to digest it all. He's got a lot of research to do. He's got other cases, of course, to handle. I don't expect a ruling anytime soon, but I think at a minimum, he's going to disqualify Fani Willis and her team from this case, in which case the state of Georgia, through the prosecuting attorney's council, is going to have to decide, is this case going to remain an orphan, or can we find some other DA to take it? I don't think he's going to go so far as to dismiss it. He might, but I do think that that Fani Willis and her days on this case are probably numbered. I think that she's ultimately going to have to be removed.
Completely agree with that. 100%. Phil, thank you. Come back soon, would you?
You bet. Anytime. Great to be here.